Well, good afternoon. In a moment, you're going to receive updates about our ongoing efforts throughout our city's three-year public safety strategy. But first, I'd like to review where we are and how we got here. At the end of 2022, after the first year of this strategy, IMPD recorded its largest ever decrease in criminal homicides. Just this past year, 2023, IMPD saw yet another record decrease of 18.9% criminal homicides. That exceeded a national average decrease of 12.3%. In short, this strategy is saving lives in the city of Indianapolis, and it's doing so at a rate surpassing the nation at large. But while declines are what we want to see, even a record decline cannot speak to the experience of every resident. This was brought into sharp focus in the waning hours of New Year's Eve just a few evenings ago. A rash of senseless, reckless behavior ended the lives of 3 people and wounded others in separate incidents. In 2022 and 2023 overall, we saw fewer tragic nights like this past New Year's Eve, and we must continue that progress. We must also identify what is working, namely the collaboration between the City of Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, the Office of Public Health and Safety, the Public Safety Foundation, and our community writ large as a whole. We must recognize the 18 graduates and more than 100 individuals engaged with the Indy Peace Fellowship Program, including more than 60 peacemakers. Deputy Mayor Rodriguez will address that in just a moment. We must also recognize our IMPD officers who continue putting on the uniform to respond to reports of violent attackers and calls for much-needed help. Chief Taylor will speak to that in a moment as well. We must also recognize the community at large. They are stepping up. They are stepping up to provide jobs, mentorships, education, and other resources that contribute to that #1 crime deterrent: prosperity. Our partner, David Mohammed, from the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, will speak to that in a moment, and how we are making sure we remain national leaders in this effort. We say it often, but it bears repeating. A safer Indianapolis is the work of our entire city. Between community and law enforcement, we can and we will continue to attack this problem through prevention and intervention. Together, those two concepts guided the success that we have experienced. And while statistics will never heal wounds, statistics will never restore a life that has been lost. The declines that we see ensure that fewer residents will bear those awful burdens. A 31% reduction of criminal homicides over the 2-year period. A 20% reduction of non-fatal shootings since the implementation of this strategy. Those statistics mean, in real terms, equates to 81 lives having been saved. To everyone who has contributed to this ongoing 3-year effort, I want to say thank you on behalf of the residents of the city of Indianapolis. I also want to stress that our work is not over at the close of 2024. Instead, we will use the valuable lessons that we have learned to make Indy one of the safest, most prosperous cities in America. And with that, I'm proud to hand it over to the Chief of the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department, Chief Randall Taylor. Chief.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year. I want to begin by saying how proud really I am of not only the work of our officers, but our detectives, our analysts, and our community partners. These are a group of people who really don't look for acknowledgement. They don't look for a pat on the back. They just want to do what is right for the city of Indianapolis. And for them, I am extremely grateful. By coming together and collaborating with our community and our partners, we're able to make significant progress in driving down violent crime, as the mayor spoke about. This collaboration shows us that our collective efforts are paying off. It shows when we work together, hand in hand, we can truly make a difference in this city. Our efforts are paying off when it comes to criminal homicides, which are down by 19%, almost 19% in 2022. They're paying off when it comes to non-fatal shootings, which we saw more than a 7% decrease over this time last year. They're paying off when it comes to robberies, aggravated assaults, and overall violent crime. We know that really our work is far from over. There's plenty of work to do. We know that the things that will be coming up for the city in the next year, we're going to have to really look at our youth violence. We're going to have to look at how many children have access to firearms and how do we deal with that. It's unacceptable for any parent or anyone who cares about children to know that youth have these weapons and they're being impacted by violent crime, either as victims or as participants. In the coming weeks, you're going to hear about IMPD's efforts on how we can better engage both our community and specifically our youth. Our community deserves, the other part is you're going to hear about IMPD from the standpoint of our remaining commitment to transparency. Our community deserves to know what their department is doing, and especially what we're doing as it revolves around driving down violent crime. It's also our responsibility to examine the why when we see trends such as the amount of officer-involved shootings that we had last year. IMPD continues to have discussions with different groups, outside companies, who would look at those issues and try to help us to find out that why. This process will take some time, but we are committed to it. I'm confident, in closing, I'm confident that with our continued collaboration with our community partners, and of course with our officers and detectives and all that are involved, we will see a safer Indianapolis, and we'll be able to take joy in that. But it's a long road, and we're going to continue going along that road. I'll now turn it to David Muhammad.
Good afternoon and Happy New Year, Mr. Mayor, Chief, and colleagues. The City of Indianapolis continued to achieve significant progress in reducing shootings and murders in 2023, with a 19% reduction in murders and a 7% reduction in non-fatal shootings. And the city experienced less than 200 murders for the first time in 4 years. In January of 2022, Indianapolis launched the Gun Violence Reduction Strategy, an initiative that identifies individuals at very high risk of being involved in gun violence and employs intensive interventions to thwart retaliatory shootings. The mayor's office and stakeholders here established a goal of reducing murders and non-fatal shootings by 10% every year. In the first year, Indianapolis exceeded its goal and achieved a 16% reduction in murders and 14% reduction in non-fatal shootings. In the past year, in 2023, Indianapolis achieved even deeper reductions with a 19% decline in murders and a 7% decline in non-fatal shootings. As the mayor said, since the launch of this strategy in January of 2022, there has been a 31% reduction in murders and a 20% reduction in non-fatal shootings, exceeding most other cities in the country who have had lesser reductions or increases. When we launched this strategy in Indianapolis, the city had very little infrastructure and a small handful of staff working on community violence intervention. Mayor Hogsett made a historic commitment of more than $100 million of American Rescue Plan Act funds to reduce gun violence in the city of Indianapolis, one of the largest, if not the largest, per capita investments of ARPA funds in the country. Now, there are more than 60 peacekeepers, peacemakers, community violence interrupters. These are outreach workers, violence interrupters, life coaches, and their supervisors who work full-time every single day to stop shootings in this city. Additionally, what makes this strategy in Indianapolis distinctive is the specificity and intensity of the work, to focus very specifically on the small number of individuals who are at very high risk of gun violence, and to engage them in intensive community-based services. Additionally, IMPD has maintained more than 100 officers who are assigned and focused strictly on reducing gun violence. These are proactive enforcement units as well as intelligence gathering and analysis units. IMPD also in 2023 developed focus enforcement operations to focus enforcement on the individuals and the groups who were most responsible for gun violence. The National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, my organization, has been working in partnership with the city, providing ongoing technical assistance and training, including on-the-ground, in-person, monthly trainings for staff. Two important notes before I close. One is, it is important to understand that while decreases have occurred around the country, thank goodness, Indianapolis has nearly doubled those decreases than the national average. Second, that there has been an increase in the number of youth involved in gun violence in the city of Indianapolis. And that is a point of concern that the city is planning to address specifically. But we also have to keep in mind and context that the vast majority of shootings are still among adults. 88% of all shooting victims and suspects were adults in 2023. Last note is, we are talking about murders and criminal homicides. That is what this strategy is focused on. There is some confusion in the public, some confusion in the media about the numbers. This strategy is specifically focused on stopping criminal homicides. There are accidental shootings that happen that are in this total homicide number. One of the first homicides of the year was a gentleman cleaning his gun, and tragically it went off and killed his son. This strategy is not focused on trying to prevent such tragic accidental shootings, but the deliberate murders that we have been successful at significantly reducing. My organization is proud to partner with the incredible men and women of the city of Indianapolis who work every day to save lives and keep the community safe. I commend the tremendous progress made by community intervention workers and law enforcement to achieve these reduced levels of violence. And I'm proud to now introduce a woman who is largely responsible for overseeing the implementation of this strategy, Deputy Mayor Lauren Rodriguez.
Good afternoon. Today you heard a lot about what happened in 2023 and in 2022, and my objective today is also to go into more detail about what we're doing in 2024 and beyond. The mayor invested a significant amount of money, ARPA money, into these reduction efforts. And I want to note that The goal was to end it in 2024 with the ARPA dollars. However, because of all of the progress that has been made, it was passed by City County Council to be implemented in the general budget, in the operating budget for 2024. So none of this today is going to be funded by ARPA dollars anymore. It is secured in the budget. That means the community saw it and has backed it, and the numbers that have been produced have supported the reasons why we need to invest these dollars, these taxpayer dollars, into this program. Additionally, David Mohammed and Chief Taylor and the mayor also had discussed the prevention efforts. A lot of the reduction has been deemed to intervention and prevention. OPHS and IMPD and our community organizations have identified the next step is to really hone in on the prevention efforts. That is why OPHS has hired an assistant director of social determinants of health, and under the leadership of Director Bernard Tucker, she is also going to hire for a prevention manager to oversee specifically youth-involved violence in Indianapolis and how to prevent those shootings, the accidental shootings, the intentional shootings, access to guns. And she is doing that alongside of this overall program and making sure that they have a critical piece in this and looking ahead, right? Those youth are going to become adults, right? And they're going to play in these statistics later on. So how can we prevent that from occurring in the future? Additionally, the mayor has also been able to, but with the help of City County Council, invest into grassroots organizations. This is year 3 of the Elevation Grants. That grant program is now open for the 5th round. The 6th round goes out later this year. That overall prevention has been in tandem with what's been going on here in the city. We cannot do this without our community, right? We cannot do this without everybody playing their part, and they also need to feel supported. And what I will say is that this administration and the City County Council has really dedicated to our community and shown that they also need to be invested in. The people that are doing this hard work every single day out in the community are feeling invested in. Lastly, I would also talk about the prevention efforts that is outside of the violence reduction program, but that may lead into it. The clinician-led program, the first of its kind in Indianapolis, under this administration and under the direction of Director Bernard Tucker, has now been fully deployed to 24/7 in downtown district. The East District, we're still working on hiring the people, but I can report to you today that we have employed 22 licensed clinicians, 24 including the directors in the program administration, and I will tell you that that is saving lives. We have responded to 134 calls, but that's through the 911 system. They also respond to calls from the community that is calling them directly to come out. They're also proactively engaging in the community to show them how to address mental health crises. And that could not have been done without this administration and with the City County Council support and the community explicitly asking us for it. So with that, I want to say that what we have seen so far is amazing, but I'm excited to see what's happening in their future and our goals and aspirations for 2024 and beyond. Thank you.
Questions? Is the money for 2024 still being funded by ARPA, or is it 2025 and beyond? Yeah, I'll make sure that Lauren is in agreement. So the 2024 budget for our peacemakers and our life coaches and violence interrupters is now baked into the city's operating budget for 2024. And then, of course, as the program continues into 2025 and 2026, we'll have those conversations when the budget comes around in the summertime for its consideration. But for 2024, we're not using American Rescue Plan dollars anymore.
This is obviously a multifaceted approach and attack, but is there any one aspect that worked the best?
Yeah, David.
So I think to your point, this is a multifaceted strategy. There are many components that work particularly well. So I'll mention a few because it really, so there is the increase in specificity where, and I'll just describe a week to try to help understand the strategy. On Thursday, there is a review of every single homicide and every single injury shooting that has a likelihood of retaliation by police personnel, a detailed analysis and discussion of which of these incidents are we concerned that are going to escalate into a retaliatory shooting. Some of those individuals identified will have focused enforcement on them, and there we have, I mentioned the 100 officers who are focused on this. And then some of them haven't done anything illegal but are making threats to retaliate for their friend's shooting online, and they have the risk factors that say they might actually retaliate. So they will be referred to the Office of Public Health and Safety and the Indianapolis Public Safety Foundation for the Indy Peace Fellowship. And the level of finding those individuals, engaging them, and getting them to agree to be in this fellowship, to have a life coach for the next 6, 12, 18 months, that has been particularly successful. Two other quick things I'd say. Well, one, because they're tied together. What this team did in early September, even before that, is say, hey, the last several years, October has been our worst year in the year. Let's have an October plan. So I might say this would be one thing to specifically look at. And both IMPD, as well as the partnership between the Office of Public Health and Safety and Indianapolis Public Safety Foundation, developed an October plan to increase efforts to focus on the individuals, groups, and neighborhoods at highest risk of gun violence, and it was successful. This October 2023 was nothing like it was in 2022 or in 2021, I think, or even previous years. So I think that October plan was one example of the partnership and the level of focus.
Anything else?
Are we counting 170 or 171 then criminal officers?
I think it's 171.